This right here is an update to a story that I talked about back in 2020 when it happened, and it was a tragedy when it did happen. And when I did speak about it, coming out of Colorado, where you had this family who's pictured right there in the top right corner, who ended up losing their lives in a fire. As you can see, the result of that is in the picture below them at the hands of three individuals. I believe two of them were PC and one of them was Asian. As you can see right here, the one who is Asian is on the screen, and his name is Kevin Bowie. Now, when he committed this crime, he was only a teenager. Okay, because he's 20 now, so he was a teenager when this happened 4 years ago. He was 16 when he did this. And it just came out that he has been sentenced, or he faces up to 60 years in prison. I don't think he's been sentenced to anything yet, but it's just saying that that's the maximum that he can receive. Now, I always tell people to really pay attention to the verbiage that they use when they say, there's a difference between saying up to and actually what you're going to receive. So I don't know what's the minimum that he can receive, but we know what the maximum is. Honestly, for committing the act in which he did, along with his accomplices, he should get life in prison, because I don't think the state of Colorado honors the death penalty. So he should consider himself lucky in that regard. But when I hear up to, I get worried, because that could mean a multitude of things, and he could probably get a lesser sentence, which he definitely does not deserve. Now, the story goes, for those of you who are unaware, is that he was plotting a revenge to get back a stolen iPhone, and the plot was to go to the house, because they use the tracking device. For those who have an iPhone, you know you can have the tracker on it. It'll tell you where your phone is at. And the plan was to go and burn down the house. The fire was always going to happen, to burn down the house of the person or the home where they located the phone, retrieve the phone, and then burn the house down. Well, they ended up going to the wrong house, and I'm trying to say to myself, there's no way they could have went to the wrong house if you have a tracking device, because it'll tell you where it's at. The phone, to my knowledge, wasn't even there. So that's why I truly believe that this was a targeted attack. And then when I go over the charges, you'll see exactly why. Because look, this was a Senegalese family, a black family, a Senegalese family. 5 of them. You had 5 members right there, and all 5 of them unfortunately passed. And then it was 3 other people, I don't know if they were living there or not, that ended up sustaining broken bones because they jumped out of the window to save themselves, to save their lives. And they ended up breaking some bones and facing some serious injuries behind what happened. But unfortunately, this family right here of 5 did not make it out. They ended up burning in the fire, unfortunately. Now, there was some other people, again, that was involved. Like I told you, it was 2 other guys. As a matter of fact, if you look at the picture right here where my cursor is hovered at, you see 3 people. You see one here, and there's another one behind them, and they all got masks on. And the reason why their masks look like that is because the surveillance was black and white, so it showed up, of course, when it looks like that, it's going to show the darkest thing, the lightest thing to be dark and the darkest thing to be light. So that's why it played out the way that it did. The article states that surveillance video had captured Bowie and his 2 friends wearing full face masks and dark hoodies when they set fire to the home. They said the police fingered the trio as suspects after obtaining a search warrant to get Google to hand over IP address that had searched the home's address within 15 days of the fire. It took them 5 months. Let me say that again. It took them 5 months to arrest the 3 individuals involved. They said they were arrested 5 months later, after the fact. One of the guys, whose name is Dylan, who was 14 at the time, they said he was sentenced last year to 3 years in a juvenile detention center and 7 years in a state prison program for young inmates after he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. They said another one, Gavin Seymour, was sentenced to 40 years in prison in March, and I think I actually talked about him. Now, look, like I said, look at the verbiage. His says was sentenced to 40 years. It didn't say up to 40 years. He got 40, and I think that was the maximum that this Gavin Seymour received. So he got the full thing for what he did. It says after pleading guilty to 1 count of second-degree murder, and that's why he didn't get a life sentence, because it was murder in the second degree. Now, this one right here stands to receive the bulk of it because he's the only one out of the trio that received a first degree charge. They say he was prosecuted as an adult. See, that basically is telling you right here, he was pretty much the ringleader of the whole situation. The other two were mainly accomplices. They say he pleaded guilty to 2 counts of second degree murder and a plea deal, and this is that proposes a sentence of up to 60 years in prison, 30 years for each count. Now, here's the thing. He only got that. That's the only charge that the 2 counts right there. Those were the only thing he got. Out of 60 that he originally had, this guy had 60 additional charges, including first degree murder, attempted murder, arson, and burglary, but the prosecutors dropped those charges. If he got hit over the head with those charges right there, he would have been sent all the way up the river. And that's why they said up to 60 years. And it says that he is set to be sentenced on July the 2nd. So I'm going to probably have to do another update when July 2nd rolls around so we can find out what he gets sentenced to. But I'm curious, though. I want to hear from y'all. How many years do you think he's actually going to get? Remember, it says up to 60 years. Do you think he's going to get the full 60? Or do you think he's going to get maybe around 30? I'm just curious. Because remember, he has 60 additional charges that they dropped, including first degree murder. I'm just curious about how this, how it is. But like I said, I always thought something was very shaky about this story when I first heard about it. I mean, when I first heard about it, it was devastating, but they didn't have all the details. But then as time went on and I was still continuing to follow this story, I'm sitting here saying to myself, something just doesn't seem right. You said something about a stolen iPhone. It was a tracking device on there, to track it to the location, but it wasn't at the location of the home you burnt down, but you just burned it anyway. Something tells me this wasn't over an iPhone, and if it was more to it than just that iPhone. It makes you wonder what the hell was on that iPhone that would make you burn down someone's home. Because if someone steals your phone, it doesn't have to get to the point where, I'm going to burn your home down and kill your whole family, which he did. And did it unapologetically, in my opinion. That's why it pisses me off that they dropped those charges of first degree murder, because you can't tell me this was not planned. Like, you planned to do this. After all, you installed 2 other people to go with you. He didn't go by himself. He didn't act alone. Just the fact that he went and got his friends to help him means that this was planned. And his friends went right along with it. But yeah, the so-called model minority strikes again. I wonder what Diane Yap has to say about this. Now, this little piece that I'm inserting in here right now actually escaped me when it happened, because all of the focus was mainly on Kevin Bowie. But the woman in this picture, her name is Tanya Bowie. This is the sister to the individual that is the subject matter of the story. And I feel like there's a connection here in why I believe he was trying to get that iPhone back. So in case y'all are unaware, Tanya, back in 2022, was sentenced to almost 11 years in prison for basically, I guess you can say, for drug possession, being a queen pin of all of sorts. I mean, this woman was distributing all types of drugs. They said, according to a plea agreement, police found 692 fentanyl pills, a loaded magazine from a gun, jars of marijuana, a loaded firearm, a scale with drug residue on it, plastic baggies, a large trash bag containing marijuana, 2 boxes of ammunition, and nearly $7,000 in cash when they searched her home in January of the previous year. So you have all of that stuff going on right now. So she actually got sentenced to 10 years and 10 months in federal prison. Now, when I'm thinking about all of this stuff and how her brother is really connected to this, and as it goes back to the iPhone, is because apparently they were doing this together. Because they said when interviewed, Kevin told police he was robbed in July 2020 while attempting to buy a gun in the City Park area. And it says Kevin told the interviewing officer that his iPhone, shoes, and other belongings were stolen in the robbery. And when he tried to track his phone, he said it pinged to the house that they set on fire, which, of course, we discovered was not the actual home. So I'm sitting here saying to myself, Why would anybody go out of their way to set a home on fire over a stolen iPhone? Usually if your phone is stolen and you can't retrieve it, you'll just go to the store, like, Verizon, a T-Mobile, or where have you, and get them to turn the phone off and just get a replacement, like get a new phone, if push comes to shove. But to set the home on fire over a stolen iPhone, I said it had to be more to it than just, okay, someone stole the iPhone, because that was going way too far. And then when you look into the story that involves his sister and the drugs that she was running, I believe that iPhone was not for personal use. I believe that was probably some kind of a burner phone. I believe that's the type of phone that it was. And that's why he went out of his way to do and commit the heinous crime that he did. Now, I could be wrong, but I truly believe that is exactly what most likely is the case. That him and his sister were running drugs with each other, and to communicate, that was the phone he was using. And because someone took it and he didn't want anybody to get a hold of it and probably expose what he was doing and it getting back to her, which of course it already has, that's what he was trying to retrieve. So I think, in my opinion, that's where the motive for him to do what he did actually came from. So this goes a little bit more deeper than what initially, like, why? Because the biggest question was, why would he do that over an iPhone? Because that's what everyone's been saying. Over an iPhone, really? What would make someone just go out of their way to do that over an iPhone? And I think this right here could very well be the reason as to why.